Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tangmen based on novel. So let's start. Dorma, where exactly have you gone? Even if you've forgotten everything, at least let me find you. Team leader. At this moment, a cold voice jolted Huo Yuhao awake from his thoughts. When he twisted his head, he saw Dailuoli looking intently at him. What? Is there something? Huo Yuhao asked. Can we go out and talk? Dailuoli asked. Huo Yuhao naturally knew what he wanted to do, but didn't reject his request. He stood up and said, all right. He didn't bring his spear along either, and walked out of the tent with Dailuoli empty-handed. When the two of them exited the house, their bunk started to bustle with noise. Many of the new soldiers started to talk among themselves. Huo Yuhao was unmoved, but Dailuoli's expression was more obvious. Do all of you think that the vice team leader is trying to challenge the team leader? It's possible. Look at the vice team leader, he seems confident. Didn't the large team leader mention earlier that as long as one's capable, he can become the team leader? It seems like the vice team leader is also very strong, since he dares to challenge the team leader even after the team leader performed today. Our bunk is indeed filled with hidden talents. At this moment, the sky outside had already turned completely dark. Dailuoli walked further away from the bunk, but Huo Yuhao still didn't ask him why. He just silently followed him. After leaving their camp, the two of them quickly came to the parade ground. Dailuoli stopped and turned to look at Huo Yuhao. Tang Dong, I'll not beat around the bush. I hope that you'll give up your position as team leader to me. Huo Yuhao peacefully asked, why should I? Dailuoli answered, I have to become the team leader. Don't ask me why. I just want this title. I can let you continue to run the first bunk, I'm not good at that. However, I'll definitely charge in front during our training and the imminent war. I believe that I'll be able to accumulate some merits and get promoted. When that happens, you'll still continue to be the team leader. What do you think? No, Huo Yuhao's answer was simple. He naturally understood that Dailuoli's goal was probably the same as his. They both wanted to start from the bottom and eventually become a high-ranking officer. It was just that he didn't have much time to linger around in the lower ranks either. Let's spar. If I win, you give up your position to me, how about that? Dailuoli could naturally guess that Huo Yuhao was going to be unwilling. However, he didn't expect Huo Yuhao to directly reject him without probing further. All right. Huo Yuhao's answer was as simple as before. He was going to quickly deal with Dailuoli before going back to meditate. It was getting late. Dailuoli was evidently infuriated by the direct and seemingly contemptuous tone of Huo Yuhao's voice. He shouted coldly before darting forward towards Huo Yuhao. He was indeed very quick. As a Soul Master's soul power increased, his body would also transform continuously, making him much stronger than an ordinary person. As he reached Huo Yuhao, he punched at Huo Yuhao's right shoulder. Huo Yuhao's body sank slightly, and he went into his horse stance, just like he had in the afternoon. Just as Dailuoli's fist was about to hit him, he pulled the left half of his body back slightly and avoided contact. Following this, he struck his right shoulder back towards Dailuoli's fist. Dailuoli only sensed a force slamming into him, and felt as if he had punched a steel plate. He staggered a few steps back before stabilizing himself, and a stunned look flashed across his eyes. During the afternoon, he could tell that Huo Yuhao's abilities weren't weak. However, he hadn't expected Huo Yuhao's strength to be above his. He wasn't going to let it go at that, however. After he staggered back, he immediately charged forward again. This time, he was much faster. He didn't punch this time, but used one hand to grab for Huo Yuhao's shoulder. This time, the look in his eyes was sharper. Huo Yuhao lifted his left hand and grabbed onto Dailuoli's hand. Dailuoli's right hand stopped halfway, and he tried to change its direction. However, Huo Yuhao's hand moved faster. Dailuoli felt everything turn blurry in front of him before Huo Yuhao grabbed hold of his wrist. When Huo Yuhao grabbed his right hand, he immediately tightened his grip on Dailuoli's wrist. With a pull, he threw Dailuoli up. Sensing danger, Dailuoli subconsciously activated his soul power. However, he only felt that Huo Yuhao's fingers were like steel fixtures tightening around his wrist and causing the lower half of his body to go numb. He was actually unable to gather his soul power because of this. There was much more movement this time. Dai Luoli was directly slammed to the ground by Huo Yuhao. The parade ground was covered in soil. However, he was disoriented, and felt as if his internal organs were tumbling inside his body when he was tossed to the ground. His bones were also on the verge of being crushed. This was, in part, due to his weight and inertia. Huo Yuhao let go of his wrist and shook his head. After this, he turned around and walked back towards their bunk. Dai Luoli was embarrassed and furious as he shouted, "You, don't go." He gathered his soul power and crawled up from the ground. Huo Yuhao stopped before turning around to look at him. "Let's go back. We still need to train tomorrow. I believe the training intensity for newly enlisted soldiers will not be slack." "No. I have to defeat you. I'm sorry," Dai Luoli suddenly shouted. After this, a layer of white light shone from his body. Suddenly, his body quickly grew larger, and his muscles became extremely thick. White strands of hair also started to emerge from his body, and his uniform almost burst from being too tight. This was the first time Huo Yuhao was surprised after entering this military camp. This martial soul that Dai Luoli revealed was all too familiar to him. White tiger. It was a white tiger. No, something wasn't right. The aura of his white tiger was rather weak. Furthermore, the hair on his body was pure white, without any black stripes. In addition, this white tiger didn't possess the strange pupils of the white tiger family. Dai Luoli, Dai Luojiao. Suddenly, Huo Yuhao recalled why his name sounded so familiar. His. The way Huo Yuhao looked at Dai Luoli immediately changed. It changed from indifference to earnesty. When he was still living in the Duke's mansion, there were a few people who were warm to him, apart from his own mother. There was a woman who was a concubine of the White Tiger Duke. This woman was yet another woman whom the wife of the White Tiger Duke hated. This woman treated both Huo Yuhao and his mother very well. In the first few years after Huo Yuhao was born, she would give them food and clothing. She had even carried Huo Yuhao before. After the wife of the White Tiger Duke found out about this, they lost contact with each other. Huo Yuhao was still very young then, which was why he didn't have a very deep memory of what had happened. However, he vaguely recalled that this concubine also had a child named Dai Luoli. In terms of age, he should be 1 year younger than Yuhao himself. This guy in front of him didn't have a pure white tiger, and his name was also Dai Luoli. Was he really his younger half-brother from the same father, but a different mother? In terms of age, Dai Luoli was 1 year younger than him, if he was really the White Tiger Duke's son. As he remembered all this, Huo Yuhao's eyes turned wet. While he disliked Dai Yueheng and Dai Huabin, he only had affection for Dai Luoli. Dai Luoli's mother had once helped his own mother a lot, otherwise, he would have died. After that, the White Tiger Duke's wife interfered, and they stopped seeing each other anymore. However, he would never forget the kindness she had shown to him and his mother. 3 soul rings rose from beneath Dai Luoli's feet. 2 of them were yellow, while the last one was purple, the best combination that he could achieve. However, his talent seemed worse than his other 2 brothers, Dai Yueheng and Dai Huabin. Huo Yuhao was going to be 19 years old soon, which meant that Dai Luoli was close to 18 years old. He only had 3 soul rings at the age of 18. For an ordinary soul master, he was considered quite strong. However, he was considered weak among the White Tiger Duke's lineage. At least, he wasn't able to excel in the Duke's mansion. I don't have to say anything else, do I? Although you are very strong, and I'm curious how you managed to achieve such strength, an ordinary person will always only be an ordinary person. You can't compare to soul masters like me. Concede defeat and relinquish your position as team leader. I'll help you in the future, and I won't snatch your authority away, either. Let's return and tell the large team leader that we are switching positions. I won't tell the others about this arrangement, either. What do you think? Dai Luoli said with a sense of superiority. Huo Yuhao revealed a smile on his face, and thought to himself, this younger brother of mine isn't suited to be a soldier. He's not vicious enough. I can tell that from our sparring earlier, and from the childish words he just said. Of course he could relinquish his position as team leader. However, he had to educate Dai Luoli, since he had discovered that Dai Luoli was his younger brother. Although Huo Yuhao didn't know why his white tiger wasn't pure, he could still help Dai Luoli develop, given his current abilities. Come on. Huo Yuhao gestured towards him. Dai Luoli couldn't believe it. I'm a soul master. You still dare to fight me? Huo Yuhao smiled. Soul Masters aren't invincible. If you defeat me, I'll let you be the team leader. Dai Luoli snorted. All right then. Watch out. As he spoke, he suddenly charged towards Huo Yuhao. After unleashing his martial soul, his speed and strength had greatly increased. He was a 3-ringed soul elder, and wasn't even considered in the intermediate tier of soul masters. However, he was still pretty decent. His white tiger was mutated, but it was ultimately still the king of beasts. He unleashed a powerful aura, and his soul power surged. Without using any soul skills, Dai Luoli reached Huo Yuhao in the next instant, and grabbed onto his shoulders with his tiger claws. Huo Yuhao furrowed his brow. Suddenly, he quickly pulled his right leg up and kicked Dai Luoli's chest. He was so quick that he even seemed to form shadows along the way. Dai Luoli's tiger claws were about to grab Huo Yuhao's shoulders, when he was kicked 7 to 8 meters away, and collapsed to the ground before he could touch Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao frowned and said, "Are you trying to defeat me with the kind of skills you are showing? Soul Masters aren't everything. It still depends on the person. I'm now your opponent, and I think you are being too soft. Are you a girl? You?" Dai Luoli crawled up from the ground and glared furiously. "How dare you say I'm a girl?" He charged forward once again, and his first soul ring shone. He used his white tiger's shield, which was the most common first soul skill of a white tiger. A layer of white light shone from his body and protected him. This time, Huo Yuhao discovered the difference between Dai Luoli's white tiger and a conventional white tiger. A conventional white tiger was filled with might and dominance after unleashing its soul skill. However, Dai Luoli's white tiger was filled with spirituality after he unleashed his white tiger's shield. His spiritual aura suddenly became very strong and blended with his soul power. It actually felt as if his spiritual and soul power had fused together. This was only a situation that occurred when one used an advanced self-created fighting skill. Dai Luoli burst towards Huo Yuhao again. Either he was stubborn or confident, he did the same thing he had before, reaching out towards Huo Yuhao's shoulders. Huo Yuhao stomped on the ground with his right foot. A low-pitched muffled sound echoed out, and Dai Luoli felt a tremor coming from underneath his feet. He was thrown a few meters into the air. As he rose into the air, his claws naturally didn't reach their target. Huo Yuhao took a step forward and pressed his right hand against Dai Luoli's chest. Dai Luoli's white tiger shield started to shine with white light in a bid to push Huo Yuhao away. However, it was a pity that he couldn't do so in the face of absolute strength, not to mention that his soul power was nowhere near great enough. In the next instant, Dai Luoli flew back again. He didn't collapse on the ground this time, with his white tiger's shield protecting him. Instead, he staggered more than 10 steps backward. This time, Dai Luoli's expression finally turned serious. If Huo Yuhao's fighting abilities were merely outstanding and he had underestimated his opponent earlier, then it wasn't just a coincidence this time. His opponent wasn't a soul master, but had managed to force him back twice in a row. Huo Yuhao's terrifying strength couldn't be underestimated anymore. "Watch out. I'm going to get serious now," Dai Luoli shouted. His aura suddenly changed, and his white hair started to look shinier. The spiritual undulations that Huo Yuhao had sensed earlier also became much stronger. Dai Luoli leapt forward again as his figure flashed. However, he suddenly changed directions in the air this time and landed in a spot diagonally 3 meters to Huo Yuhao's left. He instantly sprang forward again, and his speed soared. He turned into a projection and immediately reached behind Huo Yuhao. He deftly grabbed Huo Yuhao's shoulder with one claw while he reached for Huo Yuhao's waist with his other claw. Whether it was in terms of speed, strength or technique, he used them very well this time. Huo Yuhao smiled slightly. At least this guy has some skill. He didn't turn around. He waved his hands back at the same time to block Dai Luoli's claws and grab them. Dai Luoli was stunned and thought to himself, "Are you really an ordinary person without a martial soul who can fight me in terms of strength even after I've unleashed my martial soul?" He didn't pull his claws away. Instead, he exerted his strength and attempted to drag Huo Yuhao down. Huo Yuhao didn't move a single inch. Dai Luoli saw Huo Yuhao's hands turn completely white before a huge force drove into him. Suddenly, he was flung from behind Huo Yuhao, back to his front, and flew in the air for a few seconds. Dai Luoli didn't fall like the last 2 times. As he roared out, his third soul ring shone, and his body grew larger. It was his white tiger's Vajra transformation. His figure enlarged once again, and the uniform he was in burst open. The hair on his body was now covered with a layer of gold. He extended his claws and reached towards Huo Yuhao's hands. Hard. This was the only feeling that Dai Luoli had. He had already used his white tiger's Vajra transformation, but his opponent's palms seemed to be even harder than his claws. This was beyond his comprehension. How is this possible? Are these human hands? As Dai Luoli was trying to get over his shock, Huo Yuhao pulled his right hand back before pushing it forward hard. Dai Luoli was thrown back once again. His strength is greater than my white tiger's Vajra transformation. Is he still human? After Dai Luoli landed on the ground, he didn't rush to attack Huo Yuhao. He only stared at him intently and tried to size him up. Huo Yuhao calmly said, "Now you know that a martial soul isn't everything." Dai Luoli snorted and said, "I haven't given my all yet. Furthermore, only your technique is good. You can't break through my defense." Huo Yuhao laughed, "Do you really think so? Do you really think that I can't overcome your defense? Watch carefully then." As he spoke, Huo Yuhao made the first move for the first time in this fight. He charged towards Dai Luoli with long strides. He still didn't use any soul power, but he was already pretty quick. Dai Luoli stared at him sternly, and the golden light from his body became stronger and stronger. Seeing that Huo Yuhao was about to reach him, Dai Luoli wanted to exert his strength. However, Huo Yuhao suddenly disappeared in front of him. Dai Luoli felt a large hand strangling his neck. Before he could even struggle, a strong tingling and numbing feeling spread throughout his body. His soul power couldn't circulate anymore, and the hair on his body quickly faded away. He returned to his original appearance within a breath. Of course, there were still some broken pieces of cloth on his body right now, which helped to cover vital parts of his body. Huo Yuhao swung his hand and threw Dai Luoli off to one side. He shook his head gently as he looked at him before he walked back towards their bunk. "Wait here for me. I'll go get some clothes for you." Dai Luoli was stunned as he watched Huo Yuhao slowly leave. He seemed to lose focus in his eyes, and an indescribable sense of frustration caused him to turn pale. Huo Yuhao's judgment was right. He was indeed the youngest son of the White Tiger Duke Dai Hao. This meant that he was Huo Yuhao's younger half-brother. When he was young, his martial soul had mutated. Although his White Tiger was awakened, it was different from Dai Yueheng and Dai Huabin's White Tiger. Dai Luoli's mother was greatly suppressed in the Duke's mansion. Even though her status was slightly higher than that of Huo Yuhao's mother, she wasn't in a much better condition. Dai Luoli had always wanted to become a powerful soul master. He wasn't any less hardworking than Dai Yueheng and Dai Huabin. However, it was much more difficult to cultivate with his mutated martial soul than expected. He wasn't able to enter Shrek Academy, because he didn't reach rank 20 by the time he was 12 years old. He was the White Tiger Duke's son. Given Dai Hao's character, how would he let him get in through back channels? Under such circumstances, he could only work hard at his cultivation. However, he was already going to turn 18, and yet his soul power was only at rank 32. He was already considered quite good among ordinary soul masters, and was able to become a soul elder before he was 20 years old, which meant that not all hope was lost. It was a pity that he wasn't any ordinary soul master. He was the White Tiger Duke's son. His cultivation wasn't much to be raved about. Dai Hao was also very busy with military matters, and didn't have time to guide him. In order to seek a breakthrough and become as strong as his father, Dai Luoli silently left his home and joined the military. Of course, there was an even more important reason why he was here. Dai Luoli only felt as if all of his hopes had been extinguished as he sat there in a daze on the ground. He initially thought that he should still have an edge over others in the military, even if he couldn't compare to his brothers. Today, he managed to become a private first class, which gave testament to this belief of his. However, he was dealt a huge blow after his fight against Huo Yuhao. He couldn't even defeat an ordinary person, although he used a 1,000-year soul skill. What other hope did he still have? Let alone becoming a hero like his father, he wasn't even qualified to be a small team leader. Just as he was imagining things, Huo Yuhao returned with a military uniform. Change into this. He passed the uniform to Dai Luoli. Dai Luoli just sat where he was without reacting. Huo Yuhao smiled and sat down beside him. "Are you unconvinced? Or is it too huge a blow for you after losing to me?" Huo Yuhao asked. Dai Luoli remained silent. Huo Yuhao said, "If you are unconvinced, I welcome you to challenge me anytime. I'll let you be the small team leader if you can beat me anytime you want. If this is a huge blow for you, I only have one question to ask you. How old are you? What do men rely on in this world? Men don't rely on cowardice, but resilience. If you can't be resilient, how can you be qualified to be a soldier? If you can't beat me, aren't you going to work hard to catch up? You'll only be regarded as a piece of trash. If you simply give up on yourself like this, you'll be eliminated by this world. If that's the case, it'd be better for you to return home, buy a plot of land and start tilling. You can still live a stable life." Dai Luoli twisted his head and glared at Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao's expression looked very leisurely right now. He didn't have any feelings towards the rage that Dai Luoli currently felt towards him. "I'll defeat you one day." Dai Luoli clenched his fist. Huo Yuhao chortled. "If you can defeat me one day, you'll definitely become a successful person." Dai Luoli was scornful. "So what if I defeat you? I must become a title Doluo. You aren't even a soul master. How can you be my target?" Huo Yuhao said, "Don't be too ambitious. Defeat me first." As he spoke, he passed the uniform that he was holding over again. Dai Luoli took the uniform this time and quickly got dressed. After that, he leapt up. "I was distracted today. I'll challenge you again tomorrow." After he finished speaking, he started walking back towards their camp. Huo Yuhao said to his back, "It's fine if you want to challenge me. However, you'd better prepare some clothes for tomorrow. Everyone only has 2 uniforms." Dai Luoli's went rigid for a moment, before he quickened his pace back. When Huo Yuhao returned to their bunk, most of the soldiers were already sleeping because they were tired. However, there were those who were still awake, too. Wang Xiaodian was one of them. When Huo Yuhao returned, Wang Xiaodian silently crept up to him and whispered, "Boss, what happened? Did the vice team leader challenge you?" Huo Yuhao nodded. Wang Xiaodian chuckled and said, "I can tell that you won." Huo Yuhao laughed as he asked, "How so?" Wang Xiaodian replied, "The vice team leader wore a gloomy look on his face when he returned. After that, he covered himself with his blanket and just sat on his bed. I don't know what he's doing." Huo Yuhao replied, "All right. You should go and sleep. Tomorrow's training isn't going to be easy. You still have time to be involved in gossip." "Yes, I'll go and sleep immediately. Boss, I'll follow you in the future." Wang Xiaodian quickly snuck back to his bed to sleep. Huo Yuhao also lay down on his bed, but he didn't enter deep meditation immediately. Rather, he was thinking how he could help Dai Luoli improve his abilities. The night went on silently. The next morning, the sound of a horn rang out to gather everyone as the first hint of dawn tinged the sky. Huo Yuhao was the first to jump out of bed, and he woke up all the new recruits from the first bunk. All the recruits were whining as they got up, but quickly donned their uniforms before running out. Dai Luoli followed along. He had covered himself in his blanket the night before, and was in deep meditation. In the morning, he seemed pretty energetic, apart from the fact that he looked a little pale. He didn't even glance at Huo Yuhao, and directly left their bunk. The initial training for recruits was simple and boring. It was either running or drills. In the afternoon, there was someone from the military law department who came to talk to them about military law. The recruits were exhausted after an entire day of this. After dinner, even the energetic Wang Xiaodian immediately fell asleep. Huo Yuhao and Dai Luoli were the exceptions. After dinner, Huo Yuhao gestured towards Dai Luoli when the sky had turned completely dark, and before Dai Luoli could issue a challenge. He smiled and said, "Let's go. I'll give you another chance today. Let's go." Dai Luoli immediately sprang up. As a soul master, the recruit training wasn't too tiring for him. The 2 of them left the camp and went to the parade ground once again. To prevent detection, Huo Yuhao dragged Dai Luoli to a corner of the parade ground. "Come on." Huo Yuhao gestured towards Dai Luoli. Dai Luoli had pondered yesterday's bitter experience as he carried on with his training during the day. He thought about it for the entire day. He believed that he had lost to Huo Yuhao because he had been careless. He wasn't going to repeat the same mistake twice. This was why he was especially cautious today. In his opinion, he wouldn't lose to Huo Yuhao if he was more careful. However, was this really the case? Huo Yuhao didn't have any intention of initiating an attack, and thus Dai Luoli had to be the proactive one. After observing carefully, he felt that Huo Yuhao had many flaws. His second soul ring shone, and a streak of white light shot out from his mouth towards Huo Yuhao. It was his white tiger's fierce light wave. When his white tiger's fierce light wave was shot out, it took the shape of a halo and spread out. In terms of offensive strength, his fierce light wave was naturally weaker than Dai Yueheng or Dai Huabin's fierce light wave. However, his fierce light wave covered a larger area, and it even carried a spiritual type attack with it. It was a pity that no one at the same level could compare to Huo Yuhao in terms of spiritual power, which meant that Dai Luoli was naturally inferior to Huo Yuhao in this aspect, too. Huo Yuhao's figure flashed, and he instantly turned illusory in Dai Luoli's eyes. Dai Luoli was astonished. He had clearly locked onto his opponent before unleashing his soul skill, but he still missed. Huo Yuhao promptly reappeared in front of him. As Yuhao squatted down, Dai Luoli's tiger claws extended out, and he clawed towards Huo Yuhao's chest. Huo Yuhao stopped charging forward and lifted his right foot. Instantly, he kicked both of Dai Luoli's wrists. As Dai Luoli's hands went numb, Huo Yuhao kicked out again, and Dai Luoli was knocked into the air before he crashed to the ground 5 meters away. Dai Luoli was able to take beatings after unleashing his white tiger, and he had been thinking about how he could deal with Huo Yuhao for an entire day. As for Huo Yuhao, he was thinking of the fastest way to make his younger brother stronger. After pondering for some time, he thought that the best method was to copy the bluish gold figure that he had faced in the Yin-Yang Love Querying Valley. Thrash him. He was going to give Dai Luoli a good thrashing. It was only after a good thrashing that Dai Luoli would remember this lesson for life. If he remembered this lesson for life, his abilities would naturally improve. As a result, Huo Yuhao's plan was to conduct individual training with Dai Luoli every night during this recruit training period. Dai Luoli's tragedy started the moment Huo Yuhao recognized him. At the very start, he didn't believe that he couldn't defeat an ordinary person as a soul master. However, as time passed, Huo Yuhao was always able to defeat him using his strength and speed no matter what methods he used. Huo Yuhao knew his limits, though. He hit Dai Luoli without causing him any real injuries. A recruit's life was plain and exhausting, or at least this was the case for most recruits. Most of the recruits were fatigued because of the high-intensity training they were being subjected to. However, Dai Luoli's life was very exciting, if being hit and battered all the time could be considered exciting. Huo Yuhao stood out during his recruit training. He was the best in almost every training component. The recruits in the first bunk were slowly won over by him, because of his ability and the occasional help of his spiritual power. Huo Yuhao would also teach the new recruits some of the simpler techniques from the Tang sect, and guide them in their training. His reputation in the first bunk slowly rose. Under his leadership, the first bunk, or rather the first small team, performed the best among all the small teams. Let's go. Night fell, and it was time again. Huo Yuhao walked to Dai Luoli's side and patted his shoulder. Every night, the two of them would go out. Huo Yuhao had come up with an excuse, which was that they were reporting to the large team leader. Dai Luoli shuddered slightly and lifted his head to look at Huo Yuhao. There was a complex look in his eyes. 1 month had already passed out of the 3 months of their recruit training. He had also been beaten up by Huo Yuhao for a month. It was pathetic. The only comfort he had was that Huo Yuhao was still kind enough to not hit his face, meaning he was still presentable in front of others. However, it wasn't a good feeling being thrashed for a month. Every time Dai Luoli saw the genial smile on Huo Yuhao's face, he couldn't help but shudder. It was like a recurring nightmare at this time every night. I'm not going. Dai Luoli smacked Huo Yuhao's hand away. Huo Yuhao sat down beside his bed and smiled. Why? Are you throwing a tantrum? Dai Luoli glared at him, but didn't say anything. Huo Yuhao sighed faintly. It's fine if you don't want to go. I'm going to find the large team leader and tell him you're a soul master. He spoke very softly so that only Dai Luoli could hear him clearly. You? Dai Luoli glared furiously at Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao smiled. I have a sandbag to punch every night. It's become a pleasant habit for me. You'll defeat me if you're capable. Why is a big man like you acting as if you're a coward? Yet again. Dai Luoli shut his eyes in pain. It wasn't his first time rejecting Huo Yuhao. However, Huo Yuhao would threaten him with his vulnerability every time. Even though he knew that he shouldn't be duped, his identity as a soul master was a double-edged sword. If he couldn't defeat an ordinary person like Huo Yuhao, how would he have the face to tell anyone he was a soul master? Let's go. Dai Luoli suddenly stood up, infuriated as he walked out of their bunkhouse. Huo Yuhao smiled as he followed him. He even took the initiative to grab Dai Luoli's shoulder and drag him towards the parade ground. After a few steps, Huo Yuhao lifted his head slightly and revealed a smile on his face. Indeed, they knew each other. Using his spiritual power, he watched where they were walking. Huo Yuhao brought Dai Luoli to the same old place, a remote corner of the parade ground. Dai Luoli struggled and pushed Huo Yuhao's hand away. Before even saying anything, he kicked towards Huo Yuhao's head. He hated Huo Yuhao. Not only did Huo Yuhao beat him up every day, but he would even use words to agitate him. Huo Yuhao waved his right hand and blocked Dai Luoli's leg. His right leg kicked out extremely quickly and subtly, managing to hit the ankle of Dai Luoli's supporting leg. Dai Luoli lost his balance and fell backward. However, he unleashed his white tiger as he fell back, supporting himself with his right hand before propping himself back up. After this, he shot out his white tiger's fierce light wave at Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao could already guess what he was trying to do. Just as Dai Luoli unleashed his fierce light wave, Huo Yuhao disappeared and somehow arrived at Dai Luoli's side. He cut down with his right leg, aiming at Dai Luoli's chest. Dai Luoli roared, and his third soul ring was unleashed before he even finished using his fierce light wave. His body expanded greatly, and his claws crossed each other as they slashed towards Huo Yuhao's right leg. His claws were extremely sharp, and it was plain that he wanted to tear Huo Yuhao's right leg to pieces. A soft exclamation sounded from afar. This video will end here.